I was standing in the freezing rain, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel, watching my wife through a window she thought was private. She wasn't holding a thermometer or a bowl of soup for her dying aunt. She was holding a glass of vintage Cristal, laughing the way she only used to laugh with me, leaning into a man I hadn't seen in 2 years. In that second, the world didn't just stop, it shattered. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that rainy Saturday night in Oak Harbor destroyed every single thing I believed in, I need to take you back to where the rot first started. Elena and I had what people called a fairy tale marriage. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 5. We had this routine. Every Sunday morning, we'd go to this little bistro called The Perch, order the same sourdough toast, and plan our future. We were the couple our friends envied. I worked in logistics, and she was a high-end interior designer with a touch for making any cold room feel like home. We were saving for a house in the suburbs, talking about starting a family, the whole 9 yards. I thought I knew her better than I knew myself. I knew she hated cilantro, I knew she cried at every Pixar movie, and I knew she loved me. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared about 6 months ago. Elena came home from work looking pale and frantic. She told me her Aunt Martha, her favorite relative who lived 3 hours away in Silver Bay, had been diagnosed with aggressive stage 3 lung cancer. I was devastated for her. Martha had been like a second mother to Elena. Without a second thought, I told her she needed to be there. We agreed that every Friday after work, she'd drive down to Silver Bay to care for her aunt, and she'd come back late Sunday night. "I feel so guilty leaving you alone every weekend, Mark," she'd whispered that first Friday, her eyes brimming with tears as she packed her overnight bag. I remember hugging her so tight, telling her she was an angel for doing this. I felt proud of her. I felt like the luckiest man alive to have a wife with such a huge heart. That should have been my first warning, the way she didn't look me in the eye when I kissed her goodbye. But what came next was so much worse. The first few weeks went by in a blur of lonely weekends and "I miss you" texts. Elena would call me late at night, sounding exhausted, whispering about how hard the chemotherapy was taking a toll on Martha. I sent flowers to the house in Silver Bay. I sent cards. I even offered to drive down and help, but Elena always shot it down. "Martha is so fragile, Mark. She's embarrassed for anyone to see her like this. Just give her time." I respected that. I really did. Until the first piece of evidence fell into my lap by pure accident. It was a Tuesday evening. Elena was in the shower, and her designer handbag was sitting on the kitchen island. A receipt had fluttered out of it and landed on the floor. I picked it up, intending to tuck it back in, but the name of the establishment caught my eye. L'Étoile d'Or. It was a 5-star French restaurant. I looked at the date. It was from the previous Saturday, a night she was supposedly bedside with a vomiting terminal aunt. The bill was for $400, 2 tasting menus, a bottle of expensive Bordeaux. My heart did a weird little flip-flop. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she'd gone out to clear her head. Maybe a friend had visited her in Silver Bay. But L'Étoile d'Or wasn't in Silver Bay. It was in Oak Harbor, an affluent coastal community an hour in the opposite direction. If that was all I found, maybe I could have let it go. Maybe I would have just asked her about it. But then I checked the mileage on her car. Silver Bay is a 300-mile round trip. 4 weekends of travel should have added 1,200 miles to the odometer. When I checked the dash, she'd only put on 400 miles in the last month. The math didn't work. The geography didn't work. Nothing worked. A cold, sickening dread started to seep into my bones. I didn't say anything that night. I watched her come out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, smelling of lavender, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. I stayed up until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, waiting for the feeling to go away. It didn't. Reading those words, I felt a strange sense of calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've already decided to burn the bridge while you're still standing on it. The following Friday, I told her I had a corporate retreat in the city and wouldn't be home until Monday. She played her part perfectly, acting disappointed that we'd miss our Sunday brunch. I watched her drive off toward Oak Harbor again. I gave her a 2-hour head start. Then I drove to the mansion. I didn't sneak in. I had the gate code. The PI had earned his fee. I pulled up to the front door, straightened my tie, and rang the bell. I waited. The silence of the neighborhood was deafening. Then the heavy oak door swung open. It was Arthur. He was wearing a silk robe, a drink in his hand. He looked at me, and for a split second he didn't recognize me. Then his eyes went wide. "Mark?" he stammered. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to see my wife, Arthur," I said, my voice eerily steady. "I assume she's in the kitchen, or is she upstairs nursing her sick aunt?" I pushed past him. He was too stunned to stop me. I walked into the living room, and there she was. Elena was curled up on a white leather sofa, wearing a sweater I'd bought her for her last birthday, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked up expecting Arthur. When she saw me, the color didn't just leave her face. It was like she'd turned into a statue. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just sat there, her mouth slightly open, her eyes darting toward the door as if looking for an escape route that didn't exist. "Mark," she finally whispered. Her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Mark, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I said, pulling a thick envelope from my jacket and tossing it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "But unless that envelope contains a medical miracle for Aunt Martha, I don't think I want to hear it." Arthur caught up to us, trying to regain his alpha male composure. "Look, Mark, let's be adults about this. This isn't what it looks like." I turned to him. I'm not a violent man, but the look I gave him made him take a physical step back. "It looks like you're sleeping with the wife of the man you fired. It looks like she's been lying to me for a year while you played house in a mansion built on the bonuses you stole from your employees. Tell me, Arthur, does the Cristal taste better when—"
The silence that followed was absolute. Arthur's face went from gray to a sickly mottled purple. Elena just stared at me, realizing that the nice guy she'd been playing for a fool had just systematically dismantled her entire world. I didn't wait for a rebuttal. I didn't need one. I turned around and walked out of that house, through the rain and back to my car. The divorce was final 4 months later. She tried to fight for the apartment, but between the evidence of her infidelity and the financial records the PI uncovered, she didn't have a leg to stand on. Arthur was asked to resign from the firm a month after the confrontation. Last I heard, he'd moved to another state, and Elena was living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild a career that her reputation had effectively scorched. As for me, I moved to a new city. I started a firm with a few of the guys Arthur had fired. We're doing well. Better than well. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, I go to a new bistro. I sit by the window, I order my coffee, and I look out at the world. It took a while to realize that the person I was mourning wasn't the woman in that mansion. It was a ghost I'd invented. I'm not the man who was cheated on anymore. I'm the man who walked out of the fire. And honestly, the air has never smelled sweeter.